8:42 a.m. on February 9, 1945, Private Cleto Rodriguez crouched behind a heap of rubble in Manila, observing 300 Japanese Marines fortifying the Paco railroad station 60 yards ahead. 21 years old, 6 weeks in combat, 0 decorations. The Japanese had transformed the once elegant train station into a stronghold. Machine gun emplacements ringed the building. Riflemen occupied foxholes surrounding each gun position. 20mm cannons were positioned at every corner behind sandbag barricades. Within the main structure, a concrete pillbox sheltered a 37mm cannon and heavy mortars. Rodriguez served in Company B, 148th Infantry Regiment, 37th Infantry Division. His unit had been battling through Manila for 6 days. The American advance had pushed the Japanese back, district by district. Now, the enemy had consolidated at Paco Station in Plaza de Leo. The station had stood in what had once been a bustling Japanese neighborhood before the war. The defenders knew every structure, every alley, every firing position. Company B had attempted to seize the station twice before. Both assaults had failed. The first attack claimed 11 men, the second, 14 more. Rodriguez had witnessed medics drag wounded soldiers across open terrain while Japanese machine guns tracked their movements. Most of the injured succumbed before reaching cover. The problem was straightforward. The station sat at the end of a 100-yard exposed field. No protection, no concealment, just flat ground and enemy weapons with clear lines of fire. Every approach ended identically. American troops would advance across the field. Japanese guns would erupt. The assault would collapse. Rodriguez carried a Browning automatic rifle. The bar weighed 19 pounds loaded. It fired .30 caliber rounds at 500 rounds per minute from a 20-round magazine. In combat, the weapon could empty a magazine in 2.5 seconds. Rodriguez had learned to fire in short bursts, 3 to 5 rounds, enough to suppress enemy positions without wasting ammunition. Next to him crouched Private First Class John Rhee, 21 years old, of the Choctaw Nation, enlisted December 1942 from Pryor, Oklahoma. Rhee also carried a bar. The two men had been assigned to the same fire team 3 weeks earlier. They worked seamlessly together. Rodriguez was aggressive. Rhee was composed. Both were excellent marksmen. Their platoon had been pinned down for 40 minutes. The platoon leader debated whether to call for artillery support or retreat. Artillery could demolish the station, but it would also kill civilians still trapped inside nearby structures. Manila had a population exceeding 600,000. Thousands remained caught between American and Japanese lines. Rodriguez analyzed the station. The Japanese had positioned their heavy weapons to cover the primary approaches, but there was a house 60 yards from the objective, single-story stone construction, still partially intact. If two men could reach that house, they could establish a firing point closer to the station, close enough to suppress Japanese guns, close enough to force the defenders to redirect their fire, close enough to give the rest of the platoon a chance to advance. He looked at Rhee. Rhee nodded. Neither sought permission. They simply moved. The two men collected extra ammunition. Rodriguez stuffed 4 additional bar magazines into his belt. Rhee did the same. Each magazine held 20 rounds. Together, they carried over 300 rounds. They also grabbed fragmentation grenades, 6 each. Then they rose and sprinted toward the house. Japanese machine guns immediately opened fire. Bullets whizzed past Rodriguez's head. Dirt exploded around his feet. He kept running. 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards. Rhee was 3 steps behind him. Both men dove through the shattered doorway of the house and rolled to opposite walls. They were 60 yards from the station alone, surrounded by 300 enemy Marines, and had just revealed their position to every Japanese gun crew in the sector. Rodriguez's hands trembled, not from fear, but adrenaline. He pressed his back to the wall and forced slow breaths. Count to 3. Exhale. Count to 3. Inhale. The shaking subsided. The house had been a family home before the battle. Now it was merely walls and rubble. Most of the roof had collapsed. Broken furniture littered the floor. A family had once lived, dined, and raised children here. All gone. Rodriguez moved to a window facing the station. The frame was intact, but the glass had shattered weeks ago. He positioned himself at the left side of the opening. Never fire from the center of a window. Japanese snipers would zero in. Always fire from the edge. Rhee took position at a second window 8 feet away. Same principle, edge of the frame, maximum cover, minimum exposure. The two men had learned these lessons the hard way. During 6 weeks of urban combat in Manila, the Paco railroad station had remained 60 yards away. Rodriguez could see Japanese soldiers moving between positions, machine gun crews, mortar teams, officers directing fire. The defenders had expected the American attack from the main avenue and concentrated their forces accordingly. Nobody anticipated 2 riflemen establishing a position this close. Rodriguez raised his bar, targeting a machine gun position 40 yards away. Two Japanese Marines were repositioning the gun to cover a new angle. Focused on the weapon, they ignored their flanks. Rodriguez centered his sights on the gunner's chest. He squeezed the trigger, 3-round burst. The gunner dropped. His loader spun toward the sound. Rodriguez fired again, 4 rounds. The loader fell across the machine gun. Reopened fire simultaneously at a 20mm cannon 35 yards away. The gun crew was loading a fresh magazine. Hit the loader first, then the gunner, then a third Marine bringing up ammunition. All three went down in under 4 seconds. The Japanese reaction was immediate and intense. Every gun that could angle toward the house unleashed fire. Machine gun rounds tore through the walls. 20mm explosive shells struck the stone exterior. Dust and debris filled the air. Rodriguez dropped below the window frame, counted to 5, rose, fired at a new target, and dropped back down. This was the rhythm: fire, drop, move, fire again. Never remain in one position for more than one burst. Never allow the enemy to zero in. Keep moving, keep shooting, stay alive. Rodriguez spotted movement near the station's main entrance. A group of Japanese reinforcements ran from a building behind the station, trying to reach the pillboxes at the front. Fresh troops, fresh ammo. If they reached those positions, the Japanese defense would be significantly strengthened. He shouted to Ri and pointed at the running soldiers. Ri saw them. Both men opened fire simultaneously. The bar was designed for precisely this scenario: suppressive fire against infantry in the open. Rodriguez emptied his magazine in controlled bursts. 5 Japanese soldiers fell. He dropped the empty magazine, inserted a fresh one, and continued firing. Ri mirrored his actions. The advancing soldiers scattered, some retreating, some pressing forward, most simply falling. When the firing ceased, more than 40 Japanese Marines lay across the open ground between the rear building and the station. The pillboxes remained unmanned. No reinforcements would reach them, not while Rodriguez and Ri dominated the house. Rodriguez checked his ammunition. He had expended 3 magazines in less than 10 minutes, 60 rounds, and still had 5 magazines and his grenades remaining. Ri was in similar condition. They had plenty of ammunition, but plenty only lasted as long as the Japanese gave them. Targets. The enemy changed tactics. Instead of trying to reinforce the front positions, they began concentrating fire on the house. Machine guns, mortars, the 20mm cannons. Every weapon that could angle toward Rodriguez and Ri was now directed at their position. The stone walls provided cover, but they would not hold forever. Already, Rodriguez could see daylight through holes in the walls where shells had punched through. He looked at his watch. 9:17 a.m. They had been in the house for 35 minutes. It felt like hours. His shoulders ached from the weight of the bar. His ears rang from the constant gunfire. His mouth tasted like concrete, dust and gunpowder. Reyes was reloading his bar when the first mortar round hit the roof. The explosion collapsed what remained of the ceiling. Wooden beams crashed down. Rodriguez threw himself against the wall. A beam missed his head by inches. When the dust cleared, half the roof was gone. They were completely exposed from above, and the Japanese mortar crews had found their range. The second mortar round hit 30 seconds later, then a third. The Japanese had walked their fire directly onto the house. Rodriguez and Ri could not stay here. They had 2 options: retreat back to American lines across a 100 yards of open ground, or advance 20 yards closer to the station where the mortar crews could not depress their weapons low enough to hit them. Rodriguez pointed toward the station. Ri understood immediately. Dead space. Every indirect fire weapon had a minimum range. Get close enough and the mortars became useless. It was counterintuitive. Moving toward the enemy felt like suicide, but staying in the house was guaranteed death. They gathered their remaining ammunition. Rodriguez had 4 magazines left, 80 rounds. Ri had 5. 100 rounds plus grenades. They would need everyone. Rodriguez went first. He sprinted from the house toward a pile of rubble 20 yards closer to the station. Japanese rifles opened fire. Rounds snapped past his head. One bullet tore through his sleeve without touching skin. He dove behind the rubble. Ri was up and running before Rodriguez had fully taken cover. The 2 men moved in bounds. One running, one shooting, never both exposed at the same time. They reached the position 20 yards from the station. The angle was different here. Rodriguez could see into the ground floor windows. Japanese soldiers were repositioning inside, moving weapons, redirecting fire. They had not expected anyone to get this close. A heavy Machine gun crew was setting up in a window 15 yards away. Rodriguez could see the barrel protruding from the frame. He pulled a fragmentation grenade from his belt, yanked the pin, counted 1, 2. Threw hard. The grenade sailed through the window. 3 seconds later, it detonated. The machine gun fell silent. Spotted a 20mm cannon position at the corner of the building. The gun was unmanned. The crew had been killed earlier, but Japanese soldiers were dragging a replacement crew toward the position. If that cannon came back online, it would shred their cover in seconds. Fired a long burst from his bar. 10 rounds. The first 2 soldiers fell. The others scattered. One tried to reach the cannon anyway. Reese fired again. The soldier dropped 2 feet from the gun. The cannon remained silent. Rodriguez was throwing grenades methodically now. He had studied the station's layout during the 40 minutes. His platoon had been pinned down. He knew where the strong points were. Ground floor windows, the main entrance, the pillbox positions. Each grenade was aimed at a specific target, thrown hard, thrown accurately. He was not trying to kill every Japanese soldier in the building. He was trying to disorganize their defense, force them to abandon positions, make them react instead of act. It was working. Rodriguez could see movement inside the station becoming chaotic. Japanese soldiers were pulling back from windows, abandoning forward positions. Some were trying to reorganize, others were simply trying to survive. The defensive line was collapsing, but Rodriguez and Ree were running out of ammunition. Rodriguez fired his last full magazine at a machine gun position. 20 rounds. The gun went quiet. He dropped the empty magazine and loaded his final one. 20 rounds left. That was all. Reese was in the same situation. He had 1 magazine remaining. They had been shooting for over an hour. The constant firing, the grenade throws, the movement under fire. Both men were exhausted. Rodriguez's hands were raw from gripping the bar. His shoulder was bruised from the weapon's recoil. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. But they had achieved something remarkable. The Japanese defense had been concentrated and organized when Rodriguez and Ree first attacked. Now it was scattered and confused. Machine gun positions were unmanned. The 20mm cannons were silent. The pillboxes sat empty. Over 80 Japanese Marines lay dead around the station and the 2 Americans were still shooting. Rodriguez looked back toward American lines. His platoon was still pinned down 100 yards away. Too far to help, too far to provide covering fire. Rodriguez and Ree were on their own. They had always been on their own. From the moment they ran toward that first house, they had been fighting this battle with no support, no backup, no reinforcements. Rodriguez checked his ammunition one more time. 20 rounds, 6 grenades used, 0 grenades remaining. He looked at Ree. Ree held up 1 magazine, his last. They had maybe 3 minutes of ammunition left, maybe less if the Japanese counterattacked, and then they would have to withdraw, run back across that H-100 Red Yard killing field with empty weapons while 300 angry Japanese Marines shot at their backs. Rodriguez made the decision they would withdraw, not because they were afraid, not because they had failed, because staying here with no ammunition was pointless suicide. They had done their job, disrupted the Japanese defense, killed over 80 enemy soldiers, given their platoon a chance to advance. Now they needed to survive long enough to see whether that chance mattered. The withdrawal plan was simple. 1 man would fire while the other ran, then switch, leapfrog back toward American lines, cover each other, keep the Japanese pinned down, make it back alive. Ree would go first. He was 3 years younger than Rodriguez, but he was the steadier of the 2, more methodical, better at controlling his breathing under stress. Rodriguez trusted him completely. Rodriguez opened fire on the station. Short, controlled bursts. He was not trying to hit specific targets anymore, just suppressing fire, keeping Japanese heads down, buying Reese time to move. Reese sprinted back toward the house they had occupied earlier. 20 yards. He made it, took cover, raised his bar, shouted that he was ready. Rodriguez stood and ran. His legs felt like lead. The adrenaline that had carried him through the past hour was draining away. Every step required conscious effort. Lift foot, push forward, land, repeat. Japanese rifles opened fire. Bullets kicked up dirt around his boots. 1 round passed so close to his face he felt the Pressure wave. He reached Reese's position, dropped behind cover, gasped for air. Ree was up and running before Rodriguez had caught his breath. Back toward the next piece of cover, back toward the rubble pile, back toward safety. Rodriguez forced himself to his feet, raised the bar, fired at the station. His magazine was almost empty, maybe 8 rounds left. He fired in 2 round bursts, make every shot count. Ree reached the rubble pile, took position. Rodriguez ran. They were 40 yards from American lines now, 60 yards from the station. The Japanese were pouring fire at them. Machine guns, rifles, even the mortar crews were trying to hit them despite the difficult angle. Explosions bracketed their position. Shrapnel whistled overhead. Rodriguez reached the rubble pile. Ree was already moving to the next position, back to that first house, the one they had occupied at the start, the one with the collapsed roof and the shattered windows. Ree was 15 yards away when Rodriguez saw the Japanese reinforcements. A fresh squad of Marines was advancing from the left side of the station. 8 men, they had worked their way around the American position while Rodriguez and Ree were focused on withdrawing. Now they were flanking, trying to cut off the retreat, trying to surround the 2 Americans before they could escape. Rodriguez swung his bar toward the threat, pulled the trigger, nothing, empty magazine. He dropped it, reached for his belt. His last magazine was gone. He had fired it during the previous bound. He was out of ammunition, completely dry. Ree saw the Japanese squad at the same moment Rodriguez did. He was closer to them, maybe 20 yards. He pivoted, brought his bar up, fired a burst. 3 Japanese soldiers went down. The others scattered, took cover, returned fire. Rodriguez watched helplessly as Ree engaged the squad alone. Ree fired again. Another Japanese soldier fell. The bar bolt locked back. Empty magazine. Ree dropped to one knee behind a low wall. Reached for a fresh magazine. His last magazine. He pulled it from his belt, brought it toward the weapon. A Japanese rifle cracked once. The single shot was lost in the chaos of the firefight, but Rodriguez saw Reese jerk, saw him drop the magazine, saw him fall sideways against the wall. Rodriguez was running before he made the conscious decision to move. He sprinted toward Ree. No weapon, no ammunition, no plan, just the overwhelming need to reach his partner. Bullets snapped past him. One tore through his pack. Another hit the ground at his feet. He kept running. He reached Ree 15 seconds later. Reyes was still alive but barely. The bullet had hit him in the chest, high right side. Blood was spreading across his uniform. His eyes were open, but unfocused. He was trying to speak but no sound came out. His hands were still reaching for the magazine he had dropped. Still trying to reload. Still trying to fight. Rodriguez grabbed Reese's bar, found the dropped magazine, loaded it 20 rounds. He laid down covering fire toward the Japanese squad, kept them pinned, kept them from advancing, but he could not carry Ree and fight at the same time. And Ree could not move on his own. The chest wound was too severe, too much blood loss, too much damage. Rodriguez looked back toward American lines. 40 yards away, he could see soldiers from his platoon watching. They could not help. They were still pinned down by fire from the station. Nobody could cross that open ground to reach him. Nobody except Rodriguez. And Rodriguez could not leave Ree. He was alone with a dying man. 20 rounds of ammunition and 8 Japanese Marines advancing on his position. Rodriguez looked at Ree. Ree looked back. Something passed between them in that moment. An understanding. Reyes' hand moved slightly, not reaching for Rodriguez, pushing him away. Go get out. Live. Rodriguez knew what he had to do. Staying here meant both of them would die. Leaving meant Reyes would die alone, but Rodriguez might survive. It was not a choice. It was mathematics. Cold battlefield mathematics. 1 death or 2 deaths. Save what you can save. Accept what you cannot change. He fired. A burst at the advancing Japanese squad, forced them back behind cover. Then he stood, turned toward American lines, and ran. He did not look back. Could not look back. Every part of him wanted to stop, to go back, to stay with Reese until the end, but that was emotion. Emotion got you killed. Training kept you alive. And his training said run, so he ran. Japanese fire intensified. They knew he was withdrawing, knew he was vulnerable. Every gun that could angle toward him opened up. Rodriguez zigzagged, changed direction every 5 steps, made himself a difficult target, a moving target, and unpredictable target. 30 yards from American lines, 25 yards, 20 yards. He could see soldiers from his platoon waving him forward, shouting encouragement he could not hear over the gunfire. 15 yards, 10 yards. A bullet hit the ground directly in front of him. He jumped over the impact crater, kept running. 5 yards. Hands grabbed him, pulled him down behind cover behind the pile of rubble where his platoon had been pinned down for over an hour, where this entire assault had started. He collapsed, gasped for air, his lungs burned, his legs trembled, his hands shook so badly he could barely hold the bar. Someone was asking him questions. The platoon leader, asking about RE, asking about the station, asking about enemy strength. Rodriguez could not answer, could not form words. He just shook his head, pointed back toward the station, pointed at the bodies lying around the building, pointed at the silent machine gun positions, the unmanned cannons, the abandoned pillboxes. The platoon leader understood. He gave orders. The platoon stood, fixed bayonets, and charged across the open field toward the Paco railroad station. This time, the Japanese did not stop them. This time, there was no devastating machine gun fire, number 20mm explosions, no coordinated defense. Rodriguez and RE had destroyed the defensive line, killed the gun crews, scattered the defenders, disorganized their command structure. The Japanese who remained were isolated, confused, unable to coordinate their fire. Company B took the station in under 10 minutes. The Japanese fought room to room, floor to floor, but the outcome was inevitable. 10:30 a.m. The Paco railroad station belonged to the United States Army. The strongpoint that had stopped 2 previous assaults had fallen. The road to southern Manila lay open. The battle for the city would continue for another month, but this victory marked a turning point. Rodriguez watched from the American lines as medics brought Reese's body back. They carried him carefully, respectfully, laid him down away from the other casualties. Someone covered him with a poncho. Rodriguez wanted to go to him to say something, to apologize for leaving, but he could not move. His body had finally given out. The adrenaline was gone. The fear was gone. Everything was gone except exhaustion. A medic checked him for wounds. Found none. Just exhaustion, dehydration, shock. The medic handed him a canteen. Rodriguez drank. The water tasted like metal. He drank anyway. Emptied the canteen. Handed it back. Closed his eyes. He had been in combat for 2.5 hours, from 8:42 a.m. when he first ran toward that house until 11:12 a.m. when he collapsed behind American lines. 2.5 hours, 150 minutes, 9,000 seconds. It felt like a lifetime. Later, they would count the bodies. 82 confirmed Japanese dead, directly attributable to Rodriguez and RE. More than 40 killed by rifle fire. More than 30 killed by grenades and close combat. Everyone verified. Everyone documented. The 2 riflemen had killed more than a quarter of the station's defenders. 2 men against 300. The mathematics should not have worked, but they did. Rodriguez would not speak about the battle for 3 days. Would not eat. Would not sleep properly. He kept seeing RE fall. Kept seeing that final look. Kept hearing the single rifle shot that had ended his partner's life. Kept feeling the weight of the decision to leave him behind. On February 11, 2 days after the Paco station assault, Rodriguez's company attacked another Japanese strongpoint. The Philippine Legislative Building. Well defended, heavy casualties expected. Rodriguez volunteered for the assault team. Nobody questioned why. They all understood. He was not trying to be a hero. He was trying to finish what he and RE had started. The legislative building sat in the heart of Manila. Massive stone structure built in the 1930s designed to house the Philippine Commonwealth government. Now it housed 3 companies of Japanese Marines who had turned it into a fortress even stronger than Paco Station. Company B had already tried to take the building once. That assault cost 43 casualties, 17 dead, 26 wounded. The Japanese had fortified every entrance. Machine guns covered every approach. Snipers occupied the upper floors. Artillery spotters on the roof called in mortar fire on American positions. The building had to fall, but but nobody knew how to make that happen. Without losing half the company, Rodriguez studied the building from 200 yards away. The main entrance was a kill zone. Wide steps, no cover, perfect field of fire for the defenders. The side entrances were blocked by rubble and wire. The rear entrance was covered by machine guns positioned in the neighboring finance building. Every conventional approach was suicide, but Rodriguez was not thinking about conventional approaches anymore. Paco Station had taught him something. Get close, get inside their decision cycle, move faster than they can react, hit them before they realize you are there. He spotted a weakness. A section of wall on the southeast corner had partially collapsed during earlier shelling. The rubble created a slope, climbable. It led to a ground floor window that appeared unmanned. If he could reach that window, he could get inside the building behind the Japanese defensive line inside their perimeter. The platoon leader asked for volunteers. Rodriguez stepped forward immediately. 3 other soldiers joined him. They were forming a 4-man assault team. Their mission was simple: get inside the building, create chaos, draw Japanese attention away from the main entrance, allow the rest of the company to attack while the defenders were distracted. They moved at 0600 the next morning, February 11th, Rodriguez went first. He crossed the open ground. At a dead sprint, rifle fire cracked around him. He reached the rubble pile, climbed, pulled himself up toward the window. A Japanese grenade landed 3 feet away. He kicked it back. It detonated in midair. Fragments tore through his face, left cheek just below the eye. Blood poured down his neck. He ignored it, kept climbing. He reached the window, dropped inside, found himself in a large room, storage area. Boxes stacked against walls, dust everywhere, and 4 Japanese soldiers 20 feet away. They were manning a machine gun pointed toward the main entrance. They had not heard him enter. The grenade explosion outside had covered the sound. Rodriguez raised his bar. The soldiers turned. Too late. Rodriguez fired. Full automatic. 20 rounds in 4 seconds. All 4 Japanese Marines fell. The machine gun went silent. Rodriguez dropped the empty magazine, loaded a fresh one, moved deeper into the building. The other 3 American soldiers were climbing through the window behind him. Rodriguez did not wait for them. He was moving on instinct. Now, pure aggression. The same focused violence that had driven him at Paco Station. Find the enemy, kill the enemy, keep moving. He turned a corner, found himself in a hallway, 30 feet long, 3 doors. He could hear Japanese voices behind the second door. Multiple soldiers, maybe 6 or 7. They were talking calmly, casually. They did not know an American was 15 feet away. Rodriguez pulled his last grenade from his belt, yanked the pin, kicked the door open, threw the grenade inside, slammed the door closed, pressed himself against the wall. The explosion was muffled by the closed door, but he felt it through the floor. He waited 3 seconds, kicked the door open again, stepped inside with his bar raised. Japanese soldiers lay dead or dying in the room. Rodriguez checked each one, made sure they were no longer a threat, then moved to the next room. The building had dozens of rooms, dozens of defensive positions. Each one had to be cleared. Each one might contain Japanese soldiers ready to kill him. The fighting inside the legislative building lasted 4 hours. Room by room, floor by floor, Rodriguez and his 3-man team worked their way through the southeast section while the rest of Company B attacked through the main entrance. The Japanese defense collapsed under the 2-front assault. By 1,000 hours, the building was secure. Over 60 Japanese Marines lay dead inside. Rodriguez personally accounted for 10 of them, 6 in the initial assault, 4 more during the room-clearing operations. The medic finally got a look at Rodriguez's face wound. After the building fell, grenade fragments had torn through his left cheek. The injury was painful, but not life-threatening. The medic cleaned it, applied sulfa powder, wrapped it with gauze, told Rodriguez he needed to evacuate to a field hospital for proper treatment. Rodriguez refused, said he would get treatment after the battle was over, after Manila was secured, after the job was finished. The company commander heard about Rodriguez's actions both at Paco Station and at the legislative building. He recommended Rodriguez for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation included detailed after-action reports, witness statements from other soldiers, body counts verified by multiple sources. The paperwork moved up the chain of command. Division, Corps, Army, eventually reaching Washington. On October 12, 1945, President Harry Truman presented Private Cleto Rodriguez with the Congressional Medal of Honor on the White House lawn. Rodriguez stood at attention in his dress uniform. The bandage was gone from his face, but the scar would remain for the rest of his life. Private First Class John Reese received his Medal of Honor posthumously on October 19, 1945. His family traveled from Oklahoma to receive the award. His cousin Betty Lamar attended the ceremony. She later said that Rodriguez had told her what happened in those final moments at Paco Station, how Ree had provided covering fire, how he had drawn enemy attention away from Rodriguez, how he had chosen to let Rodriguez withdraw first because Rodriguez had a family waiting back home. Reyes was single, no wife, no children. He made the calculation, save the man who had people depending on him. Rodriguez received promotion to technical sergeant after the war, first Mexican-American to receive the Medal of Honor in the Pacific Theater, one of 6 Texans of Mexican descent to receive the award during World War II. He became the 5th person of Mexican ancestry ever to receive the nation's highest military honor. He returned to San Antonio in December 1945 to a hero's welcome. The city gave him a key to the city, parades, ceremonies, recognition. But Rodriguez did not feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor. Every time someone thanked him for his service, he thought about Ree, about the men from Company B who died taking Manila, about the 25 casualties from the first 2 assaults on Paco Station. Heroes were dead. Survivors just kept moving forward. Rodriguez left active duty in December. He went to work for the Veterans Administration. He had dropped out of high school before the war. Now he used his GI Bill benefits to complete his education. He became passionate about helping other Hispanic Americans access education and training. He understood the barriers they faced: language, poverty, discrimination. He worked to break down those barriers one veteran at a time. In 1952, Rodriguez rejoined the military, first with the United States Air Force. He served for 2 years, then transferred back to the Army in 1955. He deployed to Korea, later to Vietnam. He accumulated decorations beyond his Medal of Honor: Silver Star for the Legislative Building Assault, Bronze Star with Oakleaf Cluster, Purple Heart, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 2 campaign stars, Philippine Liberation Medal. He retired from the Army in 1970. As a Master Sergeant, 26 years of total service. He had enlisted as a 19-year-old private with 0 combat experience. He retired as a senior non-commissioned officer who had served in 3 wars, who had trained hundreds of younger soldiers who had passed on the lessons learned in places like Paco Station and the Legislative Building. Rodriguez married Flora Munes on November 11, 1945. They had 4 children: Cleo Jr., Betty, Mary, Joe. He raised his family in San Antonio, worked, attended church, lived a quiet life. He rarely spoke about the war. His children knew he had been awarded the Medal of Honor, but he did not display it prominently. It remained in a drawer alongside his other decorations, accompanied by memories he preferred not to revisit. In 1975, the San Antonio School District renamed an elementary school in his honor, the Cleto L. Rodriguez Montessori Elementary School. It was the only school in the district named after a former student. The school continues to operate today, educating children who mostly do not know the story of the man whose name adorns their building. A portion of U.S. Route 90 in San Antonio was designated the Cleto Rodriguez Freeway. A rifle range at Camp Perry, the Ohio National Guard training site, was also named for him. Camp Perry hosts the National Rifle and Pistol Championships. Every year, thousands of competitive shooters train on the Rodriguez Range. Most do not know who Cleto Rodriguez was, what he accomplished in Manila, what happened at Paco Station, or the 2.5 hours that changed the course of a battle. On December 7, 1990, Cleto Rodriguez passed away in San Antonio at the age of 67. 45 years had passed since that morning at Paco Station, 45 years since he watched Ree fall, 45 years since he made the decision to run, to survive, and to bear the weight of that survival for the rest of his life. He was interred at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, alongside 11 other Medal of Honor recipients, 6 of them fellow World War II veterans. His grave marker lists his rank, unit, and Medal of Honor, but it cannot tell the full story. It does not convey what it cost him, what it signified, or what it demanded. The Battle of Manila lasted 1 month, from February 3 to March 3, 1945. 100,000 civilians perished, 16,000 Japanese soldiers, and 1,000 American troops. The city was devastated, 90% of the buildings were damaged or destroyed. It was the second most ruined Allied capital of World War II after Warsaw. Paco Railroad Station still stands today, partially demolished in 1996 by a developer planning a shopping mall. That project never materialized due to financial problems. The station remains abandoned. Graffiti decorates the walls. Homeless people shelter among the ruins, yet bullet holes are still visible, the remnants of grenades and machine gun fire. The scars from February 9, 1945 remain. In 2015, the Philippine Department of Transportation announced plans to restore the station. Heritage conservation groups supported the initiative. The building marks a critical moment in Manila's history, a turning point in the liberation of the city. Restoration work has begun, but progress is slow due to funding shortages and bureaucratic delays. The station remains partially ruined, waiting. John Rhee is buried at Fort Gibson National Cemetery in Oklahoma, Section 2, Site 1259E. His grave marker identifies him as a Medal of Honor recipient, Private First Class, Company B, 148th Infantry Regiment. Killed in action, February 9, 1945, age 21. He left no descendants, no children to carry his name, no grandchildren to recount his story, only a grave marker, a citation, and the memory of his actions in Manila. The 37th Infantry Division suffered 352 casualties during the Battle of Manila, 45 killed, 307 wounded. The division earned 4 medals of honor in that month-long struggle. Rodriguez and Rhee at Paco Station, Private Joseph Chisetti at the Manila Gasworks, Private Willibald Bienca at the Finance Building. All 4 deeds occurred within 48 hours, February 9 through February 11, 3 days that defined the division's contribution to Manila's liberation. The story of Rodriguez and Rhee illustrates a fundamental truth about infantry combat. Numbers do not always determine outcomes. 300 Japanese Marines held Paco Station with superior defensive positions, fortified emplacements, and heavy weapons, all tactical advantages. Yet 2 American riflemen with bars and determination shattered their defense, not through superior firepower or better equipment, but through aggression and refusing to accept that the numbers made victory impossible. Military historians study the Paco Station assault as an example of small unit tactics, demonstrating how 2 soldiers operating independently achieved what multiple platoon-sized assaults could not. Key factors were initiative, surprise, and sustained pressure. Rodriguez and Rhee did not wait for orders. They identified a weakness and exploited it immediately. They established firing positions the Japanese did not anticipate and maintained continuous fire for 2.5 hours. The defenders never recovered, never re-established their coordination. By the time Rodriguez withdrew, the station's defense had collapsed, but the human cost was severe. Rhee paid with his life. Rodriguez carried the psychological burden for 45 years. The facial wound healed, but the inner scars never fully closed. He suffered nightmares for decades, replaying Rhee's fall, hearing that single rifle shot, and reliving the decision to leave him behind every time he closed his eyes. This is what heroism truly costs, not only physical injuries or immediate danger, but the lifelong psychological burden of survival, watching your partner die, making impossible choices under impossible circumstances, and living with those decisions forever. If this story moved you as it moved us, hit the like button. Every like signals YouTube to share this story with more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from Dusty Archives Daily, stories about riflemen who altered battles with courage and 2 bars. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment now and tell us where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community spans the globe. You're not just a viewer, you're helping preserve these memories. Share your location, tell us if a family member served, just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching and ensuring Rodriguez and Rhee do not fade into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.